Welcome in, everyone. It is Preakness Week, a special edition of the First Call podcast. He's Scott Shapiro. I'm Jeremy Plonk from First Bet and Express Bet. Special welcome to those of you watching in on the first Preakness wager guide right now. Embedded in the wager guide with all the handicapping, the stats, the trends, the analysis, horse players all around the country chiming in on the first Preakness wager guide. Enjoy that. If you're not looking at the wager guide right now, you should be. Head to firstbet.news.first.com and click on the wager guide link, and you can get all the information, profiles on all, dare I say, 14 contenders for Preakness number 151. Scott, we're going to talk about the Preakness at the tail end of this podcast. This is the essential handicapping for all day. We're going to get an early start on the action, 10:30 Eastern on Saturday at Pimlico. Should be a very early start and a strong performance throughout the day, but you're going to need some handicapping stamina.
You will, but these are the extravaganzas that I really look forward to, the all day ones. And, I'll get tired by the end, but the races get better. You get more time to regroup. So they don't come that often anymore. The real early starts, very infrequently, the biggest of big days. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And to be honest, we don't get the same star power because of coming back off 2 weeks from the Kentucky Derby in general. But I think there's some very competitive races. I have some opinions for sure.
None more competitive than a 14-horse Preakness, the first time in 15 years. A capacity field, knock on wood, as we record this on Thursday afternoon. A capacity field set to go for Saturday's Preakness. All right, let's get to the handicapping and our races that we will handicap for you. 14 race card, as we mentioned. There are 9 stakes races. We will handicap all 9 of them for you over the next half hour, 45 minutes or so. For those of you checking this out on YouTube or X, be sure to smash that like button, share it out with your friends. Give us some comments in the comment section who you like on Preakness Day at Laurel Park. Let's talk about the schedule at Laurel Park on Saturday. For those of you on our traditional audio channels, we're going to start things off in race 4 with the Skipat Stakes for filly and mare sprinters. Then we'll go to race number 6, back-to-back races for the 3-year-olds on the undercard. The Sir Barton going long in race 6. The Chick Lang for the 3-year-old sprinters in race number 7. We'll stay with the sprinters in race number 8, but the older horses in the Maryland Sprint. To the turf for 4 straight stakes races. In fact, race 9, the Jimmy Murphy, race 10, the dinner party for the older horses, the Gallerette for the fillies and mares in race 11, and the Jim McKay turf sprint for the Dashers in race number 12. And of course, Preakness number 151 will be lucky number 13 on the card, race number 13 of 14. All right, Scott, let's get to it. To the Skipat Stakes we go in race number 4. Skipat, late 70s, early 80s, really top flight filly and mare sprinter, won the Barbara Fritchie locally here in Maryland. That was at Bowie back at that time. Of course, now at Laurel for the last many years. And I will say this, Skipat, the most acclaimed Connecticut bred of all time, I think, with her accomplishments. Who do we like in the Skipat Stakes after the history lesson?
I don't have a Connecticut bred for you. I knew little about Skipat before working here, and I learned more and more every year. That one, though, that came out of nowhere on me. But, I don't know if there's a Skipat in here. Moto trying to make it a 6 for 12 in her career, and was probably going to be the favorite, with Irad Ortiz coming in off 2 dominant wins. But those races saw her in Texas as a Texas bred just dominate on the front end and kind of do it her own way. She did it fast, but, as you see in, following races, class matters, and also being contended with matters. And I think Striker Has Dial is going to keep her honest. Kappa, I think, has a shot, as does Passage East. But I think Benedetta, and I'm a little bit biased, this mare was good to me, running second in the winning colors for an exact at 23-1 back last May. But you get time off. I know there was a couple of underwhelming efforts at Oaklawn, but that's a little bit of a different track than this one. And Keith Asmussen off, no disrespect. Jose Ortiz on, the hottest rider in the country, maybe the world. I don't know. I don't follow the other parts of the world enough, but he's riding very, very well. And you combine that with a guy in Steve Asmussen that kind of knows when to give his horse his time. He does very well on this card generally, and is, kind of knows maybe she wasn't quite good enough to run in the Derby Stakes, but this spot maybe fits her very well.
Very similar to Zeitlos last year, who Asmussen brought here to win this race, the Skipat. And as you mentioned, he's kind of Mr. Undercard. What Bill Mott used to be to the Derby Day undercard, Steve Asmussen's been to the Preakness undercard over the last decade or so. So Benedetta can't argue with that one at all. I'm going to take the local runner in here, Passage East, won the Barbara Fritchie back in February. The top race for the sprinters in Maryland for the fillies and mares is the Barbara Fritchie. That was at 7/8 of a mile. Got to get up going 6. That's a little bit tougher test against this kind of quality of horse, but she's 4 for 5 with a second place finish going 6 furlongs. She's going to need to finish up, though. There should be speed in this race, as though you mentioned with Moto, as fast as she is, and Kappa as fast as she was last year as a 3-year-old winning the Grade 2 Raven Run at Keeneland. This race should set up, and we have 2 closers in here. You've got the 4 Benedetta. I've got the 2 Passage East. We're kind of in the same ballpark here in race number 4, the Skipat Stakes. Let's switch things up now. Race number 6 on the card. Race 5's an allowance. So let's go to race number 6 on the card. The Sir Barton Stakes. This really looks like an either-or situation in here, Scott. You've got Reagan's Honor, who went into the Bluegrass Stakes as one of the horses I thought that was a legit Kentucky Derby threat for Cherie DeVoe. His first couple races this year were absolutely awesome down at the fairgrounds. Let's take a look at him in action in allowance company before the implosion happened at Keeneland. And this is the Reagan's Honor that we're hoping to get back.
Coming toward the quarter pole, Reagan's Honor. And then comes Puck Phantom and You Belong Here as they straighten away past the quarter pole. And with Jose Ortiz, Reagan's Honor charges now with the wind in his sails. 3/4, 1 minute 11.55 seconds. Reagan's Honor a furlong away from finishing them off and has a 4-length buffer zone over Favorite Day, second Gamely. Vamos Carlitos is third at that 1 pace. Proctor Phantom fourth, well clear. It's Reagan's Honor. Reagan's Honor, a sharp all-the-way winner by 6. Favorite Day was second, Vamos Carlitos third, and Proctor Phantom finished fourth.
Cherie DeVoe, Jose Ortiz, perhaps you've heard of him. They're back with Reagan's Honor here in the absence of Golden Tempo. To me, though, it's a one or other situation in here against Final Story, right? This is a horse who dominated last time out at Keeneland. Highly impressive, going 7/8 of a mile. He was strong for Brad Cox. This is the only horse Brad Cox has on the entire Preakness Stakes card. I think that shows a little bit of intent, and I think this is a really good spot for him in the Sir Barton. So, Final Story, Reagan's Honor, to me, it's an either-or situation. Do you see it any other way?
Not really. And to me, the more trustworthy, even though I know he hasn't gone 2 turns, is probably Final Story. Both of them have to answer the no Lasix question, which is, something that we didn't have to think about. But Final Story's never run without Lasix. And the only time we saw Reagan's Honor run was without Lasix as well. And it was the Bluegrass, which, it's hard to overly forgive, but probably a really good learning experience. Didn't break on top, was in with the better horses, was mixing it up, and then just didn't want to take any part in it anymore. It was kind of embarrassing pick for me in the Bluegrass. And
I was with you.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to throw anybody else under the bus. I'll take full responsibility. But the difference now is, Cherie DeVoe's a barn that can get hot and cold, and when they get hot, that the horses run to their best races often. And, the ROI is 547 over the last 30 days. Obviously, that's inflated by Golden Tempo, but the 7 for 20 record, I think, tells the story. This horse is going to either handle this field pretty convincingly, or I think maybe won't fire. So that's the interesting part of the race. Obviously, some people that are, more or less risk averse, are willing to gamble and take a chance. Maybe you try to beat the horse totally, but to me, it's a tough race because, like you, it's hard to think both of them aren't going to fire.
My own 16 starts almost on top of the first turn here at Laurel. It's a tough spot for an outside post. I know he's not that far out with just 7 of them entered prior to any scratches, but still you're outside the other potential speed in the race too. So for Reagan's Honor, he's probably going to lose, 2 wide, 3 wide into that first turn potentially, because I think Final Story is definitely going to go under Irad Ortiz for Cox out of the 4 hole. The 5 Falcon Jet, a former Baffert transplant. A lot of times they give up on a horse in California. These high dollar ownership connections, the triumvirate of sorts. They give up on the horses with Baffert. They send to Brittany Russell. We'll talk about that with Taj Mahal a little bit later. The Falcon Jets already had a start for Russell here in Maryland. It was a winning one. Now we'll get tested for class here. He's the son of Justify, who struggled a bit in Southern California and put it together going 6 furlongs. Now he'll do the stretch out as well. Final Story, Falcon Jet, both may have more early speed in here than Reagan's Honor. So Reagan's Honor, if we thought the early speed was the problem, maybe when breaking a little flat-footed in the Bluegrass, could find that same kind of thing again. I'm going to go against him in this particular spot. I respect him, but I'm going with Final Story in here to win on the stretch out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any trust in Reagan's Honor, but I don't want to try to beat Cherie and Jose right now. I mean, I'm being honest. I just think, and the one interesting thing that may or may not come into play, you've got Falcon Jet, you've got Point Aiden, who, might even show some speed, but Jose is on Reagan's Honor. Irad is on Final Story. I'm not saying that they're going to have some fix-it on the race.
Yeah,
it is unlikely those two are going to go 22-1 against each other, though, right?
Right. No, it's probably be a little bit more rationed out on the front end. They tend to not attack one another when they're both on the two speeds in a particular race. So it could be a sprint to the finish, if you will, then with something left at the top of the stretch. Let's go next to the Chick Lang Stakes, race number 7 on the card. 6 furlong sprint here in the Chick Lang, and there's been some good 3-year-old sprinters in this race over the years, named for the former general manager of the Maryland Jockey Club, one of the most popular figures in the history of Maryland racing, the late Chick Lang. We've got a star in here, back in action. I think a star, horse who ran in last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but came back at Oaklawn in the Renaissance Stakes with a fantastic win, and then nearly wired the Saudi Derby last time. We're talking obliteration. Let's go back overseas and take a look at his most recent effort back on Valentine's Day.
Out in front, Obliteration, Satono Voyage coming there very strongly. Best Green, then in 4th place, Kia Agito, having been let down, didn't really find a great deal. Union Security, Satono Voyage cruises up here on the outside of Obliteration, looking for the closers, and making ground from the back is Al Haram, who's staying on, and also from the back, Wonder Dean, and they are making significant inroads. Satono Voyage is paddling, Al Haram thrusting down the outside, battling back Obliteration, but it's Al Haram right over the top who will win the Saudi Derby. Al Haram home for...
Certainly a quality race there. Wonder Dean would come back and win the UAE Derby next time out. Back to the U.S. for Obliteration, where Scotty's run 4 sprints on the dirt in America. They tried him on the turf in between, went to the Breeders' Cup on the turf last year, but in his 4 sprints in the U.S., 3 of the wins are by 7, 7, and 10 lengths. The other one is second place finish to Ewing in the Saratoga Special. He's really good dirt sprinting, and I think this is where he's going to stick.
I do as well, and I just think you're asking for a lot to beat this horse in this spot. You got a guy in Steve Asmussen, we've already mentioned it once, but this race is his. 5 wins since 2015, 6 total, so career best. And, there's a lot to be said for why it's not a fluke. It's the fact that he knows exactly. I mean, in this case, he didn't run Obliteration maybe for a couple of reasons on the Derby card, but the main one is the horse wasn't back on the training tab in time to get here, and he's not going to rush the horse back. But, just in general on this card, he just knows exactly where his horses belong. If this horse gets back to his best, even the Saratoga race in the Sanford, it's just hard to see him losing this race. Again, another horse, though, that if he doesn't happen to win pretty easily, I wonder if he has to run second or third.
He could go the other direction, but there's nothing on his form that suggests that, right? I mean, he's got 8 starts, 7 times first or second in there. The only one where he was 4th was in the Del Mar race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. So in the sprint race on the grass. Again, you got Jose Ortiz. This could be one heck of a day for Jose Ortiz. We're already talking about him on 3 potential live stakes horses, just 3 stakes races into the card. Obliteration for me on top. I thought the one Full Mean had an option in here to play. The 5 Igniter, kind of an X factor in here, winner of the Jimmy Winkfield for Rick Dutrow. This is the horse who's won 3 of the last 4. The only time really running up the track was in the Remsen at 9 furlongs. We're going nowhere near that far. And as a sprinter, this horse has been, pretty lights out. Again, Irad Ortiz aboard, Igniter for Dutrow. So another one where the Ortiz brothers 1-2 in the Kentucky Derby. They might be 1-2 in a couple of these races on the Preakness undercard as well.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I mean, Igniter, obviously hard to knock. Like you said, the only poor effort was in the Remsen, and, debuting at 26-1 at Saratoga. In those big races, and running third is a very good thing for a Rick Dutrow horse, as a promising sign. The question is just how good are those races that he's coming out of where he was the huge favorite. And some those New York races this winter have yet to stack up. And I'm saying that anecdotally. I don't have everyone in my mind, but they just don't seem to be stacking up.
But we're looking at, some pretty logical horses early in the stakes here on the card. And this happens a lot on the big race days where the beginning of the program, a little bit on the chalky side sometimes, whether they're high dollar maidens that were well meant for Derby Day or Preakness Day, or allowance horses who are well placed in these races for inflated purses on the big race days. So it might start a little chalky. Maybe we get into some bigger prices as the day goes on. But again, when you're playing early pick fours, pick fives, these multi-race sequences and such, sometimes it only takes beating one of these really high-profile type favorites to blow up a ticket. Obliteration would certainly be one of those kinds in the Chick Lang. To the Maryland Sprint we go next. It's race number 8 on the card. This is the infamous R-Tax race, if you remember, way back in the day, 1999, I believe it was, when a fan came out on the track. And Lee Chang Farrell was his name, the fan who was out on the track. If you're looking for some Preakness trivia, you can win a bar bet with that one. But me and Marty McGee are probably the only two people in the world that remember that. But Mr. Farrell infamously came out on the racetrack, took a swipe at R-Tax, and just caused chaos in the results of the Maryland Sprint. None of that nonsense this year at Laurel Park. We're going to have a very well-behaved and caviar and wine crowd in the limited 4,800 attendance for this year's Preakness Day card. Celtic Contender is a horse in the Maryland Sprint that I think fits really well here. Third in this race a year ago. He's now age 5, but since his 3-year-old season, he's been one of the top sprinters in Maryland, and he's been able to hold that form over a couple of years. Really loves it here at Laurel. 6 wins from 14 starts. I'm going to take Celtic Contender. Celtic Contender, I believe, actually is the proper pronunciation. Celtic Contender for Hammy Smith here. That's who's my pick's going to be. Who do you like in the Maryland Sprint?
This is a race I'm excited about. Maybe I've got to give a little bit of more of a look to Celtic Contender. I thought the 4 and the 5 are the horses to beat in here in general. Both Haley's First Notion, who might be on a regress, but I mean, just even a slight regress off the last would make him tough. It's going to be a lot different of a race. Obviously, not going to be 2 to 5, tougher competition. And, Floodlights is a horse for Wesley Ward that I've not been very high on throughout, but he seems to have turned a significant corner here since moving back to the dirt. And the last race, he was really impressive, just completely turning away his more stablemate. I like Johnny V being on this one, second off the bench. I think he's sitting on a big race. But my play in the race, I didn't pick him, but my bet in the race is him to be into the number, and it probably backed up. So horse that goes 4th off the layoff as a 4-year-old, but I just think continuing to get better. I think had some promise early on in his career. You might have liked this horse in the Bathhouse Row last year or something.
Yeah, I love this horse.
Yeah, but I think he's going to get the right trip in here. I think there's a decent amount to a lot of speed. You've got Bring the Smoke, who was tugging in that last race. They take the blinkers off, but from the rail, and Faster Gator, their speed there. The 2 horses I mentioned and your horse are also speeds. I'm not saying this horse is good enough to win, but he doesn't have to be. If we can get him in second, maybe even third with one of the speed horses drawing off at 12 to 1, I think with only 2 wins, I think that's going to be a very worthwhile play. And who knows? Maybe he's good enough to win. Those last couple of races he's in Oakland, and you know better than me, but they appear to stack up very well with this field if you look at the groups.
Yeah, they would. And really some more notes about him and their trainer, Ron Moquette, of course, most famously for Whitmore. Whitmore was similar to him in that he did so much early that they decided to take a shot on the Derby trail and try to get him through the Arkansas Derby and into the Kentucky Derby, and eventually became a top. They did the same thing with him. Also, Far Right's another one that Moquette did that with, and then ended up turning out being better, shorter. So he keeps his horses together healthy like this, and when they run in form, you see his form cycle. He's run like 8 times in a row in this form cycle now, and he's getting better and better. Moquette's percentage at Oaklawn was terrible the first part of the meet, started to pick up a little, and you almost see this horse's running lines representing the way the barn was trending, Not as good at the beginning of the meet and just kept getting better and better and better and going the right direction. I wouldn't be surprised if him runs a good one under Bejarano. I think that's a sharp pick in this particular spot. Celtic Contender I like on top, but him certainly one we definitely want to consider in here. And what was the other one? The 5 Floodlights. for Lael Stables. Lael Stables wants to win on Preakness weekend too. These are the folks, the Jacksons, who had Barbaro, based out of the South Philly area on the Delaware line. And this is kind of a local deal. This is, the Maryland circuit and the Preakness places that they want to run their horses on big days. They don't have a ton with Wesley Ward, a lot of them with Arnaud Delacour. You see those connections win a lot on the Preakness undercard. Now they bring one with Ward. This horse is well meant too, Floodlights. So 5, 6, 7. I think we got some good options here.
Yeah, it's a good race. I kept diving into this one for longer, and it got me to a horse that I think is a good exotic to use at the very least if the race shapes up the way I want. But there's some good horses, and there's definitely a shot that your horse, Haley's First Notion, or Floodlights just kind of draws off, and then you're kind of hoping to get him, into the minor spots.
Yeah, when you're looking at the stakes races so far on this card, as we're up to race number 8 in the Maryland Sprint, I mean, it's the best betting race of the stakes races so far that we have on the Saturday program. To the 9th, we go at Laurel Park on Saturday, Preakness Day. I'm really holding myself back from saying Pimlico at any point. So Laurel Park, race number 9 on Saturday. The James W. Murphy, Jimmy Murphy, a popular trainer in Maryland for decades, always well known for his turf runners and his turf fillies. And these are 3-year-old colts going in the Jimmy Murphy. A mile on the grass at Laurel Park. That's a 2-turn race at Laurel. Very expansive turf course at Laurel Park, wide. They can run over various lanes. Turf's going to be in absolutely pristine condition going down to the edge, I'm sure, for Preakness Day on Saturday. Weather, I didn't talk about it at the top of the show. There was some rain on Wednesday into Thursday, but the forecast for the rest of the week looks great. Sunny and 70 for Friday, sunny and 80 for Saturday, and the temperatures are actually going to warm up into the 90s in Laurel, Maryland by the beginning of next week. So temperatures on the rise, 80-degree day expected. So we're going to have firm turf conditions and a really good grass course for the Jimmy Murphy. Scott, we've got a field of 8 3-year-olds in here. Which one do you want to spotlight?
Well, I mean, to me, I don't understand the allure of Proton. That's my main take in this race. I think remember Mamba is a very good horse that ran in the Transylvania, but I don't think these horses had any excuses in those races. Proton, if you watch his last 2 races, this is a horse that kind of wants the lead. For some reason, Johnny V isn't giving it to him, but when he had it, he didn't finish the deal either. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but throw it off the bench as the 9-5 favorite. Not a fan. Same with Atfield. I mean, both of these horses were on the inside, which was the place to be on that early day at Keeneland, if there was a place to be. I don't know. To me, Turf Star by default a little bit. I don't know if I trust with the blinkers last time, but the other motion and the Kitten's Joy was a total toss, in my opinion. And, before that ran pretty well in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And then you got the wild card at number 3, Zinal. This is a weird move. I mean, Jonathan Thomas, I mean, maybe they hustled the horse. Maybe he won't be in there. Maybe he did him a favor, but they're not really. This is a serious operation that takes their time with horses. He was underwhelming in just an okay race at Santa Anita. They must think he's ready to really take a step forward on the surface switch here. So I don't want to let that horse beat me. And if the 6 Turf Star is the second choice, I think that's decent value.
Yeah, I can't imagine the 3's in all with that one career 4th place finish out at Santa Anita April 2nd. I can't imagine he's in here to fill the race when Irad Ortiz is named, right? So that's kind of, you wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That was not even a real thought. I just was trying
but in a lot of cases, a handicapper will look at a page and say that. Like they only had 8 for the stakes. Maybe they were hustling somebody. But when you get Irad, I mean, interesting enough, the buyer, I'm not a speed figure guy, but the 88 buyer in running 4th is going to stack up in the race. Maybe the 3's in all is one to keep some tabs on here. Hey, we're going to talk about a maiden in the Preakness a little bit later, a maiden in the Jimmy Murphy. That's nothing, right? I mean, that's just kind of dust on the shoulder if we get a maiden in this particular spot. I don't know. Maybe I just kind of fell for the Kool-Aid as well, but I did pick Proton on top in here. This is not a race I'm wild about. You say, why does everybody like Proton? Why does he become the favorite in here? Maybe it's because he won the Laurel Futurity over this course last fall.
Proton now on the move. Proton moving up well, 3 wide. Around the far turn with 3 ace to go. Then Parks of the far outside there, 3 wide, and Sunrises in between horses. They race to the top of the stretch, and they make that turn for home. Just holding his blue suede hooves. Outside, Proton is set down. Proton continues to march forward. Jutland gets a rail run. Jutland moves second on the inside, but Proton got the jump. Proton from Jutland, a furlong left to go. Late run Parks outside for a share two. Here's Proton. Proton and Jorge Ruiz in the Laurel Futurity. They'll bound away to win by a length and change. From Jutland second.
Great to hear the sounds of Dave Rodman on the podcast with the call there from Laurel. And he gets that center stage once a year, Preakness Week. One of the most underrated race callers of his entire generation. Now a veteran. I've known Dave for 25 plus years now, but just a great guy and somebody who, bleeds Maryland racing. I mean, he is Mr. Maryland and really should get more thought when you talk about the great race callers in the game. Dave Rodman, looking forward to hearing his calls throughout the course of the weekend. Now, let's go to race number 10. It's the Dinner Party Stakes, grade 3 here on the grass, 1 mile and an eighth. Dinner Party used to be the Dixie. It was a race that was right before the Preakness Stakes and would lead into the Preakness. It's moved up a little bit on the card this year because it's a field of 7. Better betting race in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. That gets the featured spot on the undercard in race number 12. So we go to race number 10 here. I made this the Express Bet race of the week out of its historical perspective. Dinner Party, I believe, was the horse who won the very first Preakness way back when. So there's a lot of history when you talk about these races in Maryland. Grade 3, $250,000. Shug McGahee has won this race 6 times, including last year with Fort Washington. Fort Washington is back in action, and he's at Laurel Park. You know the exit you take off of the Baltimore Beltway to go to Laurel Park?
It's Fort Washington Drive.
It's the Fort Washington exit, so it's only lined up for him. I mean, how do you lose at the dinner party, huh?
Nah, that was last year's edition. We had it. We're going to take a look at it here. Or
it's not the right exit for Pimlico, but it is the right exit for Laurel.
Well, hopefully he was a little bit ahead of his time because he did win the race last year, and he came home, and that was. I don't remember if I had a good day, but I remember this was a good one for both of us at 5-1. I probably didn't have a great day, or I would remember. But yeah, Fort Washington. But I mean, I think this is a different horse a little bit right now, and this is a different race. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think he was better coming into this race a year ago. He was coming off a win in the Canadian turf, off the same kind of layoff. Shug's using the same pattern. He's now age 7 though, and we've only seen. I mean, they've been running this race for like 100 years. We've only seen literally 3 horses 7 and up win this race: 2 7-year-olds and 1 8-year-old. In fact, they have been running this race for more than 100 years. Because I went back and looked and tried to find the last back-to-back winner of the Dinner Party Stakes.
Yeah,
how do you like this one?
Yeah, go ahead. I was
exactly 100 years ago, 1925 and 1926. Horse named Sarrazin won the race back-to-back.
Oh, yeah, Sarrazin, obviously.
So we're on the 100th anniversary at the Fort Washington exit. I don't know how we're going to beat Fort Washington here, but I actually think Dresden Rowe's going to do it. I think he's the best horse in this spot, coming off back-to-back wins. One of those in the fall at Woodbine with trainer Lauren Richards. Since then, though, he's transferred to Todd Pletcher. Todd got him back at Keeneland, and I thought he got a really good trip and an easy trip at Keeneland, but I think he's going to get a similar kind of trip coming off of that allowance win. I don't know who the defined speed in this race is. Maybe it's Thundering the 2. I'm not sure. Maybe Cruise Denial tries to go back to the front after not breaking last time. But Dresden Rowe should be sitting a pretty chilly trip in here and certainly get the jump on a deep closer like Fort Washington. So it's Dresden Rowe for me. Pletcher's won this race back in 2012, and he doesn't have many horses this weekend running. He's got 1 Friday. He's got 1 Saturday. Dresden Rowe, the only Pletcher on the card Saturday. He'll be my pick.
I love Cruise Denial in this spot. I think this is a very serious horse. I know he's a Jersey bred. Maybe I'm a homer. And, he hasn't faced the competition that he will today. Really, other than you could very much argue that Burnham Square would fit very nicely in this spot. I don't know if he would get over bad or where he would be, but he looks like he's serious. This horse just easily handled that horse wire to wire. I love the fact that this horse, he didn't really miss the break last time. It was as if he wasn't really ridden for speed the same way by Ruiz. And I didn't look completely at the field, but I think the knowledge that they were going to go faster might have played into that. He still won. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, my only concern with this horse, and maybe I'm not giving Dresden Rowe much respect. Another friend of mine that's very sharp as well told me, he thinks Dresden Rowe's the likelier winner. That makes me happy. That means I should get a price here because when you look at Dresden Row. He's going to have the connections, Pletcher and Pratt over a New Jersey bred
Right.
promotion. So that part, and then if he stacks up equally or better on paper, I should get 9-5 or 2-1 here. I'm all in on Cruise the Nile. I think he's going to be ridden for speed, whether that means he's first or second. And I just think I think we're to the point where his pedigree doesn't matter much, and he's going to get the jump on these horses. I think he's a very good horse, for a Jersey bred.
I went back and did my replay work. I watched the race of him winning the Henry Clark. I was impressed the way he was able to run a different style, get up and win. And then they left the winner's circle interview on the video, what they do on the Maryland YouTube, which is really nice that you get to see the interviews after the race. So Callie Francois interviews for Maryland Jockey Club, interviews Graham Motion and says, where are we headed next? Are we headed to the dinner party? And Graham says, no, I'm not inclined to run him a 1 1/8. I think he's a miler. I said to myself, okay, I don't like this horse anymore, but he shows up here in the entries. His first inclination was not to run the horse to the 1 1/8. He thought he's best at a mile. I'm not quite sure. So maybe I heard a little too much. Had I not heard that post-race interview, I think you, looking at the paper, say he looks like a major contender here. But if Graham doesn't like him at 9 furlongs, why should I?
But how does Graham not? I mean, he said it. Maybe, I don't know. Do we really believe he doesn't like him? He made a decision to run him in the biggest race of the year in Maryland, which means something to him. I mean, or maybe he saw the field. I mean, it's not as if this is a grade 1. I don't
right.
think
Exactly. No, he might have looked at it and said, I don't think we're a 9 furlong horse, but we are against these. And I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, Dresden Rowe hasn't necessarily proven over the turf or anywhere, lately that he's going to be better finishing in a 1 1/8 either. So I think the 1 1/8 is a question for the best horses in here. Fort Washington, I think, wants a little bit longer, maybe, ideally, based on his. So I just think this horse is very talented. I'm going to hopefully a lot of people heard that, but and don't bet him. You got me a little concerned. I had maybe as one of my top plays of the year so far. If he's not 2-1. You scared me a little. I hate it.
I don't know if it's serendipity or what, because I can't remember ever listening to the Winner's Circle interview after watching a race replay before.
Yeah.
It just happened I don't know. Maybe I didn't click off of it fast enough, so I started listening in, as I was making notes on the trip. But yeah, so I don't know. We'll find out. But again, if this is a classic kind of race that we're used to seeing in the Dinner Party Dixie over the years, then you say maybe he's not up to that kind of level. But Graham won this race with Dr. Brendler. He's won it with Better Talk now. He knows what it takes to win this race, the dinner party. So I think he's got a horse who's got a major shot in there. I'll be surprised if it's not one of the two. I think your horse in there and mine, I think we've kind of got him surrounded with that pair in there. Dresden Rowe's probably going to go favorite, and your horse will probably take the benefit of the money on Dresden Rowe and Cruise the Nile. Might be a fair price in there. So too deep probably in race number 10. Next up on race number 11, Preakness Day at Laurel Park, it's the Gallerette, grade 3, $150,000, named for the 1946 champion mare. Scott, we talked about Graham Motion in the Dinner Party Stakes quite a bit. I'm hoping he gets dessert here in the Gallerette because number 2, Revolta Gaia, is going to be one of my best bets on the card. A blistering pace last time out, came with the finish despite being up on that pace in the Dahlia Stakes. This is a filly who in France a couple years ago was a grade 1 type Group 1 horse over there. She's got a lot of back class, and she's coming up to the race, I think, the right way. And I think there's some horses in here that might be a little bit vulnerable that are going to get bet, and I think you agree.
That is my opinion in the race, and I'm going to add you can say it again. I don't even want to make you have to say it. The 2-horse for Motion.
Revolta Gaia, I've got it now after practicing 10 times.
The International that took a lot of money in her last 2. When I first looked at the race, I thought it was a negative. She hasn't won twice in the States at short prices. But, you brought up the good point about the pace, and then even more so, it's very encouraging. She's finally able to put 2 starts together, right? I mean, she wasn't able to do that. So probably got a lot more out of that race in a beneficial way. I'm against the Chad Brown runners in here, Accent and Child of the Moon. Not that they can't be there, not that they can't win, but I think they'll be underlays. I think they both have had fair chances in their races. Obviously, Accent has won 3 of her 4, but last time she got in what I consider trouble that didn't matter that much, maybe cost her a placing or something, but she's going to get hammered in this race with Pratt in the trouble. Child of the Moon as well. Austere, I think, will get over bet. So I'm basically, using all the prices in here. Myra's Love, a Luke-ish warm, beyond Luke-ish, Luke is possible warm top pick. But I'm going 1, 2, 4, and 6 to try to beat the logicals or the favorites in the Gallerette.
Should be inside speed here with the 2. There's not a lot of pace in the race, and some of the best horses in this race come from the clouds. So we're looking for a pace edge, hopefully, to pay off and not have to go 46, 109, and 4 like last time for Revolta Gaia. That's my choice in race number 11, the Gallerette Stakes. To the 12th we go, the Jim McKay Turf Sprint, named for the great Marylander, the founder of the Maryland Million, but more widely known as the host of ABC Wide World of Sports and all their Olympic coverage for many a decade, the great Jim McManus, Jim McKay, his television name. This is a race that is absolutely loaded in history on Preakness undercards, with Ben's Cat winning it on multiple occasions and getting everybody up out of their seats. King Leatherberry, the stakes named in his honor, of course, trained the great Ben's Cat, and he had the prep race, King Leatherberry, in his name posthumously for this Jim McKay Turf Sprint, in which 6 of the 11 runners in this field all come out of the King Leatherberry Stakes last time out, Scott. We're going to get a chance to look at that in just a minute, but for me, the handicapping really starts going back to some replay review when you have so many horses coming out of the same common race.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't get as much out of it as other times. Maybe it's because one horse just was much the best. Maybe it's, whether it's trip related, a lot of times where I like to find the real edges is flow related. And I think the number 3, Jean Valjean, ran better than looks last time. 2 back. This will be the 3rd start off a long layoff, which with a turf sprinter like Elizabeth Merriman in this spot, I am absolutely fine with, not worried about the return. But 2 back in the race that we're going to take a look at, the King T. Leatherberry, at 28 to 1, this horse was battling right off the pace. They're basically going at it with the 2 to 1 favorite, I believe, on the inside. And while this horse ends up finishing 7th, easily disposed of that one from the outside as a long shot. And, lost by a little over 3 lengths in a race, as we'll see, that totally falls apart late. Now, you get the confidence booster. Now you get Flavian Pratt. This horse is 8 for 19 in his career. He likes to win races. I think he's got a jockey that likes to win races as well. I like Jean Valjean quite a bit in this spot with a tactical edge.
The others have plenty of running to do. Iman, Incinerator, and King Covey's at the back of the pack. They're a quarter mile from home. Doncho trying to punch on home. But now on the outside, Jean Valjean. Here comes Four Harp. And in between horses, Outlaw Kid gets a great split. On the far outside, Chasing Liberty is leveling off too. And Schwartzmeyer still in the thick of things. Schwartzmeyer between horses. Outlaw Kid down to the inside. Extreme outside, Chasing Liberty. Chasing Liberty on the outside. Outlaw Kid down to the inside of the second wire finish. Outlaw Kid. Outlaw Kid from Chasing Liberty.
George Weaver, the trainer of Outlaw Kid, one of the better turf sprint trainers around. But you can't expect to get that kind of trip twice in a row. You got 11 to 1 last time on Outlaw Kid. You cash, you smile, but you can't get greedy. If he's able to pull that off again, he will have earned it probably this time. I went with number 1, Run Curtis Run in here. This is the second off the layoff form cycle move, where I think he got a lot out of the return race last time out at Churchill Downs. Finished a good second in that race. They won't have Lasix in this particular spot, but the horses run decently in some stakes in the past without the Lasix. Maybe better with it, but I like the second off the layoff. We're down to the inside, and I think a horse who's 10 for 11 in the money at this 5.5 furlong turf trip, but only one of those wins. Going to need some luck in here to get through and to get the right trip. You get Tyler Gaffleone riding. I'm going to take my shot in here with Run Curtis Run in what should be one of the better betting races on the card. Field of 11 in here. Turf sprints kind of open themselves up to some chaos, and maybe we'll get a chance to, get a decent price in here. Run Curtis Run for me. I'm hoping to get somewhere in that 6-8 to 1 range.
I think he's got a significant chance if all things are equal. I'm really worried about how Tyler's going to be able to navigate this trip. Pretty big field, right? He's
wide turf course is the only hope. That's this is a really big, wide, expansive turf course, but yes, that is a concern for sure with the trip.
Well, right, and like the thing with Run Curtis Run, is a lot of these horses are going to need trips, like Chasing Liberty. The other Outlaw Kid, like, coming from off the pace. That's what I like. You usually a lot of times use the take some of the variants out of the way, or the elements. I just think the 3 is going to get the jump on these horses. So as a 7-year-old, it looks clearly like this was the goal all along. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like this one's chances.
Eliminate the variables, take them out, and all you got to do is have your horse fire their best shot, and you don't have to worry about all that other stuff. Scott's going with the 3, Gene Valjean. I'll go with the 1, Run Curtis Run in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. Next up, Preakness number 151. Let's talk about the middle jewel of the Triple Crown. 14 of them have entered, the first time in 15 years with a capacity field of 14. Knock on wood if we all get to the starting gate. A mile and 3/16 at Laurel Park, a very rarely run distance. In fact, in the last 15, 20 years, they've only run one race at a mile and 3/16 going into this weekend. They will run the Pimlico Special on Friday at a mile and 3/16. But the Bald Eagle Derby was a turf race that was scratched off the turf at a mile and a quarter, moved to a mile and 3/16 on the main track. And so we don't have a lot to go on when we think of these races in terms of how they may look. But this race is going to start 16th of a mile in front of the finish line, a short run to the first turn on a 1.125 oval here at Laurel Park. So I think outside post positions are going to be compromised to some degree if you want to be up into the mix. Incredible's out in post number 12. He's going to be my pick in here because I think he's dropping back. If they try to get up into the mix in here, I hope Jaime Torres doesn't try to get position in this spot, but just lets them go. There are as many as 10 or 11 horses in this race who kind of want to be first, second, third down the backstretch. That's too many of them. Let them go, sit back, get over, and save some ground with Incredible in here. And I think he can have the finishing trip to win the Preakness Stakes, Scott. But this race is really going to be kind of, once the gate opens, it's going to be kind of every man for himself going into that clubhouse turn, I think.
Yeah, it's actually the first race. I can't remember the last dirt race. I was so post-conscious, other than the Kentucky Derby. Usually it's a one and the draw. Now it wasn't that big of a it's 20 horses with the history of the rail there, but there's some post positions in the way this race shakes out that don't seem advantageous. And Jaime Torres, I don't think he's a poor rider. I think they might take his license away though if he tries to get aggressive in this. I mean,
he did win the Preakness wire to wire a couple of years ago with Seize the Gray. That was over at Pimlico on a wet track. That was a whole different situation. But what I do like about Torres in this particular spot is the nerves aren't going to bother him. He's already won a Preakness, right? So, it's a big race. It's $2 million. There's always nerves and butterflies in there. But I think the fact that he's won a Preakness helps a little bit in the mental game. But strategically on the track here at Laurel, most of these jockeys are going to be riding a 2-turn race at Laurel for the first time. Most of a lot of the main track races on the undercard are 1-turn and sprints. There's not a lot of opportunities to get familiarity with riding 2 turns here at Laurel on Friday and Saturday's card. So they're only going to have a couple laps around there to kind of figure it out. All of them are kind of, other than Sheldon Russell and Taj Mahal, all of them are rather noobs to this kind of situation that they're going to be dealt with in the Preakness Stakes this year. But, a mile and a half at Belmont, a lot of jockeys never ride a mile and a half at Belmont either before the old days of going to the Belmont Stakes. So it might be overblown having experience over the track and over this kind of trip, but certainly doesn't help or hurt Sheldon Russell in here with Taj Mahal. Talk about some of the main contenders you see in this year's Preakness.
Well, firstly, I think Taj Mahal with Sheldon's experience would have been better served from a post that would have taken a little more experience. I don't think his ride here is very much questioned. Maybe they'll have some plan to get aggressive, get into the first turn, and then stalk. But I don't see it. By the way, I think this horse wants to lead, but there's just no way there's any sort of plan here other than get out of the gate and go, bud. Try to get position. And when I say bud, I mean husband and wife. So I think that's a fair question. I wasn't kind of saying it negatively. I'm sure they're buddies at this point. I would think it. I'm worried about that.
I hope so. Well, they may not be at the dinner table if things don't go well in the Preakness, though. I mean, that's always a touchy.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't know. I mean, anyway, I think he's a major. He would be a contender. I'm worried. I guess you asked me for the main contenders. I really have kind of gone less and less on Taj Mahal as the week's gone on. I was worried that he could wire this field out because of his upside, but I keep coming back to the fact that Bob Baffert at one point passed on this horse. I know that's been under. Not to knock Brittany Russell, it's just I just don't think of Bob Baffert in the past passing up horses. I know this is a kind of an outlier Preakness in many ways. It's a different track, etc. But, I don't think Bob passes on too many Triple Crown winners. If there's one thing I can be confident of with him. But then you got the fact that this horse is going to take a lot of heat. You got tons of speed to the outside. Napoleon Solo has one way to go. I'm playing this race like you are to fall apart.
Right.
And to me, I think Incredible is the likeliest winner, perhaps, but I think the money will show on him more than a horse like Oselli, who the only thing that keeps me from thinking he's a really certain to hit the board is just, the uncertainty of the racetrack and coming back quickly, which I'm not even worried about the comeback quickly. If Whit Beckman that early, I actually think it might be one of those horses that is better on short rest. We'll see. But everything, I don't know if I can trust him to win. But my main thought here is last race he had two horses ahead of them or behind him. They ended up being first and second. And I think you go into that race if you're Tyler, even though you're 70-1, and with Beckman, we can't not get the jump on Renegade, right? So this race, I want to be last if I'm Oselli. That's it. Yeah. I want to try to time the race right. He might hang anyway, or he might go by and someone battle back that maybe is in his range of outcomes. But I think he's going to fire, and I think he's going to get a great trip, great setup at least. Hopefully not too wide. But so to me, it's Oselli and Incredible. And I know there's a horse that we both kind of warmed up to as the week went on, though, that doesn't fit our way we see the race shaking out, maybe, though.
Yeah, and that's Chip Honcho. I've talked about this over the last 24 hours. And the more I go back to Steve Asmussen, when I'm like, okay, why did they really come out of the Kentucky Derby? Was something wrong? Was something amiss? And I went back and just listened to the interviews, read the reports. And Steve made a very compelling case for the Preakness the day that they dropped out of the Kentucky Derby, where he said about this horse's mental capacity is not built for 150,000 people, but there's only 4,800 at the Preakness. He knew that the attendance for the Preakness was restricted to 4,800 people. Derby week, he's thinking that. To me, that's
Steve.
That's like being tuned into everything. You're like Belichick or Nick Saban. When you think about coaching. So that was the first thing that I liked. He also talked about how hard, in hindsight, the Risen Star Stakes was on this horse. That he ran a huge number that day. When he got beat, he led all the way and got beat by Paladin. Paladin was the Kentucky Derby future wager favorite in the individual pools at that point. And we know Paladin turned out his quality lines actually played out because Renegade, the horse whom he beat last year, and his rival was a 2-year-old, went on to become one of the better 3-year-olds all the way through the Derby and just missed the Derby by a head. So those running lines against Paladin look better. You remember Golden Tempo was behind this horse in the Risen Star. He beat Golden Tempo. He beat the Derby winner. He only got nailed at the wire by Paladin. Again, a horse who measures up very favorably with Renegade. So you kind of look at these company lines and Chip Honcho and you say, did he just bounce in the Louisiana Derby? It was his 4th race in a row in that stakes series. He ran in the Gun Runner, the Lecomte, peaked in the Risen Star, and probably got his heart ripped out a little bit. And that was 1 1/8 early in the year. Valentine's Day going 1 1/8. Not many horses are asked to do that in the 3-year-old season. It's usually later. It's April until you're asked to go 1 1/8 in most cases. Maybe he just had it ripped out of him, and that's why he bounced in the Louisiana Derby. Steve's had horses run very big races in the Preakness over the years. Of course, you know about Curlin and Rachel Alexandra, but Epicenter ran a dynamite second here. Chip Honcho, I'm warm to him, and you got Jose Ortiz aboard. I do not like the pace scenario. I don't see anything in his past performances that tell me he's going to come rallying from off, 6-8 lengths off the pace and win. But the way Jose's kind of got the magic hands right now, he just might.
Yeah, Tenfold was the one that was good to me running.
Tenfold in the Preakness,
yeah, that was a little different. That was the lighter raced version horse. This is the kind of the opposite. But Steve is such a wizard again at knowing his horses and knowing at a different level, like you said, thinking at a different level. I don't want to say other guys don't think like that. I wonder how many of them are able to with their owners, though. That puts them in this horse, the one thing I'll add is with a potential bounce, the Louisiana Derby was bad. Everybody thought he was a major contender, but if you add to the fact that he ran a huge race, and Steve mentioned it, and it shows in numbers, this horse was 3 wide stalking. He didn't make the lead, and the rail was, significantly better that day. So maybe that adds to the fact that he just had nothing left and, was completely out of gas. So again, it's the trip that worries me, but I ask you, and with the last thing I'll say is, what would his price be in this race if you toss the Louisiana Derby and he's coming in off the others? 3-1, 5-2?
He's favored. He's favored off that second place finish in the Risen Star. I mean, the layoff would obviously be a concern, but like if time didn't matter, and those kind of things like that. No, he's got one bad race on his form, and it was the one where he was probably supposed to bounce and did. And if you're worried about, well, maybe that's just blowing smoke talk. This horse worked Derby morning. Look at his work tab. May 2nd, he worked Derby morning, and he worked a bullet that day. Then he worked again on the Sunday after the Derby. So he's actually had a couple works since not running in the Kentucky Derby. And Steve Asmussen, for all of his victories, 10,000, 11,000 now, however many it is, he's racked up to. He's never won a Kentucky Derby, and you got to think it's like I've got to run this horse in the Derby. I've got to run in the Derby, and he didn't. He showed restraint. He did the right thing. Now you get Ortiz because, by happenstance, the Derby winner pops open because they don't come back and run in the Preakness. I don't know. It lines up really well for Chip Honcho. Again, but to me, pace makes the race. It's always the number one qualifier when you're trying to break ties. If you got a couple horses you like, who gets the best of the race shape? How is the pace going to set up? And for me, it just sets up better for Incredible. So Incredible, Chip Honcho, Oselli, some combination of those three. I feel really good about those three in terms of an exacta. I think the exacta comes from that particular group. We haven't mentioned Iron Honor, the morning line favorite. I'm a little befuddled that he is the morning line favorite. I know there's a lot of that connectivity between Chad Brown winning 2 past Preaknesses with horses just like this, right? A couple of years ago, it was early voting. Prior to that, back in 2017, Cloud Computing. Both horses who came out of the Wood Memorial only had 3 career starts. It looks like chapter 3 of the same story in here. But this horse doesn't look like he wants to go a mile and 1/8, much less a mile and 3/16 to me at this point. So I don't know how you take Iron Honor in here. He's not passed horses in his races with any level of success. I know the blinkers come off, so he's probably going to be a little farther off the pace than his running lines show. He gets Flavian Pratt to ride this time versus Manny Franco. Maybe that makes a difference. But I don't see him passing a bunch of horses, and I don't want to take 9-2 to find out.
Yeah, he's not. I can't imagine he's going to be the favorite just because I think, I don't know. Maybe the computers will make him the favorite, but I don't know really. In terms of people that I trust and respect and have talked to about the race, there hasn't been a lot of bullishness. But I'll play devil's advocate. I don't really like the horse a lot because I never really have. But let's just presume I didn't have like a biased opinion. When I say I didn't really like him, I mean as a 2-turn horse, like you're saying. But let's just say he's gone for the 2 turns for the first time last time, which was true. After 2 wins, and we don't have that thought in our mind. He's actually bred to go 2 turns. And last time was a brutal trip. I mean, he got caught wide, 4 or 5 wide on the first turn and was bumped a little. And the race then fell apart. It's an excusable effort in that sense. And you say race shape is, very important. To me, it's the first thing I look at in a race. So that's the most important thing in a race, unless you just have horses you think can just overcome it. But, he's tough for me to get to, but you add the blinker. I guess I would say the blinkers off, and Pratt means to me they're going to try to take him off the pace. He's either going to be terrible or it'll work, and maybe he runs a big race that we don't see coming from him. But I see the former a lot more. Yeah,
we talk race shape. Here we are. Here's the race shape: speed, press, middle, closer, and they're all in the speed press columns over here. If I can get it right in reverse. So, I mean, that's kind of the way you look at it. This race looks top heavy to me in terms of pace, and if he's going to win, he's going to have to do something that he hasn't shown yet. Stylistically, I think in order to win this, that we're talking about with the favorite in there, Iron Honor. Now, we do have 3 horses back from the Kentucky Derby. I don't think anybody has a lot of love for Robusta in here, a horse whose best chance is near the front and probably can't make the lead and probably can't win this race. No lead, no pass probably will be his outcome in this spot. But the other 2 horses coming out of the Derby are the late runners. They're Scott and I's top choices. Went back and spliced up the video a little bit for the Kentucky Derby and give you a chance to look at where these 2 were. Incredible and also Oselli. They're right next to each other, about 3 furlongs from the wire where we're going to pick up the video. Let's watch their trips from there to the wire and see if we can't make a case for one or the other, or maybe both of them as the exacta in this year's Preakness.
Bergener 1-2 on the far turn. Mike Smith and So Happy are there to their outside. 2.5 back. And then down toward the inside comes Emerging Market as they make their way to the top of the stretch. Further Ado is getting going on the far outside with Commandment. They're both putting in their runs as they arrive into the final furlong. Oselli is also gaining ground on the far outside. as they come to the last 16th of a mile. Zanon Bourbon in front. O'Sully, a huge long shot. Renegade and Golden Tempo are closing too. Here's Golden Tempo. Golden Tempo and Cherie DeVaux make history in the Kentucky Derby over Renegade in a final time of 2:02.27 seconds.
Made indeed. Who's going to make that history in the Preakness? Maybe it's one of the two coming out of the Derby. Incredible got in a little bit of trouble. He was behind horses in there. O'Sully going to the outside turned out to be the better move in terms of staying out of trouble. He then caused himself a little bit of trouble when he started to lean in during the run through the stretch. But I think you can make a case they were both running decently through the wire at 1.25 miles. Incredible kind of got his, once he got away from everybody and got to the outside of horses, kind of made a nice little run there on the end to get beat 4 lengths in all, 1 length by 3 lengths behind O'Sully, who got beat 1 length for all the money. I think those are the 2 main horses in here. Also, I really think Chip Honcho might be coming up to the race really well for Steve. So to me, I think you're looking at some form of fashion of those runners in there. 12, 2, and 6, and however you can work them in there, I think is the right way to go.
Yes, please. No, I ended up picking Chip Honcho for a second just because thinking it's going to be the 2 dead closers, perhaps again, might be wishful, even though it looks like that.
Yep.
And there's often races, especially in Maryland. It's hard to say at Laurel, but there's many races that semi fall apart, but the best horse tactically evolved. Like I think Chip Honcho can hang around and run a huge race and still be there. I'm hoping O'Sully, ideal world, O'Sully runs second to either Incredible or Chip Honcho. But most of my wagers will have O'Sully keyed around in exotics. But, Incredible, Chip Honcho would not be surprising to me either. So we're seeing it very similarly. And that hopefully is a good thing. And hopefully some of the, regular viewers and the new ones for the Triple Crown will be on board with us and take advantage.
For a closer look at our suggested wagers, as well as Millie Ball's preview of the Preakness Stakes and her suggested wagers, be sure to check out the first Preakness Stakes wager guide, news.first.com, and click on the wager guide link. Free access to that. Handicappers from all around the first team, the racetracks in Florida. You get Brian Natto, you get Ron Nicoletti chipping in. You got the West Coast gals chipping in as well with Millie. You've got Michelle Yu handicapping the Black-Eyed Susan for us on Friday. She had the Kentucky Oaks nailed for us in the wager guide back a couple weeks ago. You get Zoe Cadman from the West Coast as well. Handicappers from all around the country. Tom Quigley, George Ortizar. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few of the handicappers along the way in the guide. Frank Carulli, Brian W. Spencer, Dustin Fabian. I can't remember everybody in there, but I've done so much work on this guide that most of the names are popping up in my head right now. So hopefully you enjoy that. Be sure to check out the wager guide. And when you're betting this weekend, be sure to bet with First Bet and Express Bet because of that $20,000 exactathon on Friday and Saturday. $10,000 in cash up for grabs on Friday, another $10,000 on Saturday. All you got to do is play $2 minimum exactas, hit more exactas than the other players, basically is what you want to do. And you want to hit at least, 5 is it, Scott, or 6 for the exactathon?
I think it's 6. I think it's 6 this one.
Yeah, 14 races on the card. Hit 6 hit exactas in 6 different races, $2 minimum. You can play as many exactas in a race as you want. You can box 4 horses. You can play a wheel, whatever. But just hit a $2 combination in 6 different races on the 14 race card, and you will split your share of $10,000, $8,000 in that split with other players on the platforms. The other $2,000 each day goes to the person who hits the most exactas of all the players. Maybe you'll go 14 for 14. We've had people sweep the card in these exactathons before, so it is possible, and you'd be the only one to take down that extra $2,000 bonus. That's going to wrap things up for our handicapping for this year's Preakness Stakes card at Laurel Park. We'll be back to High Hope Pimlico next year, baby. We'll see with all the reconstruction, everything in flux in the state of Maryland right now. But Scott, I want to give you the final word as we head out for the weekend.
Yeah, no, I know the Derby horse, the Derby winner, and many of the top contenders going in did not return. But I think this field has come up real fun. I think it's a great gambling race. You also have the money back offer, the 2-day weekend on the big races, the Preakness, and then the Black-Eyed Susan the day before. Just those races, $10 back on your win bet. Just register for that separate than the exactathon. But a lot of fun ways to get involved. You got the 12%. 50-cent pick 5 opportunities over the 2 days. So there's a lot of good racing, a lot of good wagering, and I'm really looking forward to it.
You got the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double, a million ways that you can go. Check out the wager guide for all of that information. On behalf of everybody with First and my partner, Scott Shapiro, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great Preakness, everybody.